Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Snakedance, the second story of the 20th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Peter Davison as the 5th Doctor. Snakedance is the 125th story overall, is 4 parts long, and is written by Christopher Bailey. Once again, not Kate Bush as it was rumoured to have been. So the plot of Snakedance is as follows. The TARDIS makes an unplanned landing on Menusa, where preparations are underway to celebrate the defeat of the Sumerian Empire 5 centuries earlier. But the ancient evil of the Mara lives on. Antigone, who's been haunted by disturbing dreams ever since her time under the wind chimes in Diva Loca, is now a pawn in its plans to re-enter the physical world and subjugate the Manusan people. Only the Doctor can stop the Marab. But first, he must convince the authorities that he's not just a deluded fool who believes in children's fairy tales. So that is the plot of Snakedance. Kinder's a good story, a nice follow-up. Snakedance, sorry, I think Snakedance is a good story. It's a nice follow-up of Kinder, but I do think that story is quite weak in comparison to Kinder, but I'll get to the reasons why later, as expected. The production was very well done though. I really like the set of especially the Menusa marketplace. It looked very much like one of those markets you see on those during those exotic holiday destinations, and it really worked well with the story itself. The special effects were alright, especially when the Mara and Tegan were like together and Tegan was like turning into the Mara, so to speak. And that scene was quite scary, and the snake dance did have some very scary imagery itself, which was expected. The script was quite good, and I think the direction by Fiona Cumming was alright. The plot was good. The plot was good, but then the execution does fall flat a teensy bit. And Snake Dance is obviously the follow-up of Kinder, as expected of season 20, because every story in this season actually has a villain from the Doctor's past running. So it was expected, and it was revealed that the Mara didn't really die when the Doctor was able to trap the Mara in the circle of mirrors and Kinder. And the Mara was pretty much residing in Tegan's subconscious ever since Diva Loca. The concept was quite interesting, especially in Menusa, which is basically like a tourist planet with the legend of the Mara being commercialized, and how the Mara was defeated during the Sumerian Empire 500 years ago, and is pretty much now like a reenactment, which pretty much indicates that the Menusans pretty much sold out their cultural beliefs for capital. It does contrast with the Kinder tribe from Kinder, because they were very fearful of the Mara, and the Manusans in this story, they just didn't really give a shit. They were just pretty much saw it as a monetary gain. And then Snake Dance was also based on how isolated Christian sects were in the Arizona desert, handle snakes for religious rituals, which was quite interesting as well, which also kind of makes sense with the whole desert aspect of it. And there were some very good moments in the story, especially the part one cliffhanger when Tegan was fully under the control of the Mara, and the Mara showing up in the crystal ball, and her scream pretty much merged with the Doctor Who credits thing, which was quite interesting as well, because you see the skull like zooming in, like as the sting hit, the camera pretty much zooms into the crystal ball, just like in I think it was Leisure Hive when the Doctor was being pulled apart by that machine. Like it pretty much zoomed in his face as well, and that was quite interesting. I also like the scene when Dojan was with the Doctor was with Dojan, and the snake actually bit the Doctor. We don't actually see the bite, but then afterwards, the Doctor and Dojan were pretty much telepathically communicating, was quite good. The climax of the story is very much well done. Everyone, including Nissa, was pretty much frozen in fear and hypnotized by the Mara's true form, because their mental energy had all been drained, and the Doctor was refusing to give in to the fear of the Mara, and was using the crystal and envisioning Dogen in order to try and finally defeat the Mara. That scene was very well acted, and I actually like the end scene when Tegan is pretty much back to normal, still very much traumatized from her latest ordeal of the Mara, and the Doctor's pretty much comforting her. That was a very nice scene as well. So on to the acting, which I thought was quite good. Peter Davison shines once again, and the Doctor was written very well in the story, and you can definitely sense how desperate he was to try and save Tegan by trying to convince Amber and the others that the Mara was returning. That obviously ties in with the Doctor's character development because the Doctor did not want to lose Tegan as to how he lost Adric, and this was evident in the scene with Dojan, and he sensed the urgency to try and save Tegan from disaster and had pretty much nowhere else to turn to since nobody would listen to him except Nissa and Sheila, who Sheila understood the dangers and allied himself with the Doctor. I did like the scene when the Doctor was explaining the six faces of delusion to Amber, and then he counted the six faces, and that Amber was as the sixth face, and the Doctor pretty much said the sixth face is Dora's own face, which was quite funny as well, and obviously fitting for the story. Sarah Sutton was good as well. Nissa was MIA in Kinder and appears at the very end, and because of reasons, I think Sarah Sutton was going through. I think it was. I think it was a contractual issue or something like that, or I don't know. But she was absent in that story. I think I explained it in my previous review of Kinder, and then so here she experiences first-hand over Tegan's ordeal with the Mara and just stressing the urgency needed to stop the Mara, and it was pretty obvious that she was told what happened on Diva Luca whilst she was sleeping, so she does have some idea of what's going on and what the Mara is capable of. And I liked how Nissa didn't ask too many questions, just went along with the Doctor to try and save Tegan and destroy the Mara for good. She does have some good moments, especially when she tried to rescue the Doctor, but then she was caught by Tanner. And Nissa just changed her. This is actually the first story with Nissa's new outfit. So she's wearing like this dress with some shorts underneath, in comparison to her tracker night dress, which was quite nice so to speak. So definitely gives some nice little change from that. Janet Fielding was great as well, and I do think that Snakedance is definitely one of her best performances as Tegan. Tegan was still very much tormented by Damara and it was still even controlling her when Tegan didn't even know it. And especially when Tegan set the coordinates for Menusa. Fielding had some very good hammy acting, especially when she was possessed by Namara, and then she did one very evil laugh, which was very memorable. I think I remember watching. One of the special features, one of the DVDs when Sarah Sutton, where Janet Fielding went to a convention, I think in the 90s, and the people were trying to get her to do the Menusa laugh, the moral laugh, and she was like whacking people's head with like the pamphlets or something. So I think that was quite a funny little story. But then yeah, I like the scene. I did like how Janet Fielding was able to capture the struggle Tegan was facing of trying to like not give into the possession of the Mara, and then there was Sif, it was Mara and Tegan were just literally fighting over her body, and there was a scene in part 2 when Nissa found Tegan, and Tegan, although she was still possessed by the Mara, a bit of Tegan like pretty much slipped through, and she was literally begging Tegan for help. But Tegan was begging Nissa for help, and then nothing really much happened afterwards. That was also quite good. And I liked at the end of the story how Nissa was still very traumatized over what happened, and Tegan was asking the Doctor if the Mara was gone for good, and the Doctor assured that the Mara was gone. It was a very heartwarming scene, and I liked how the Doctor was comforting Tegan. So on to the sidecast. I thought they were quite meh, but then they were alright. So first of all, we had Lon. He was the heir to the Menusan title of the Federator, and he was the Federator's son. He was a sport brat who mocked the traditions of Menusa and showed very little interest in them. He even listened to the Doctor's warnings over the Mara, but he was just bored. Just wanted the Doctor to entertain him. But then Tegan pretty much passed over spread the possession to Lon when he had the Mara tattoo, and he was still acting the same after the possession, and he was even willing to take part in the reenactments. But Lon was annoying, but he was quite interesting, so to speak. He was played by Martin Clunes in one of his very first TV roles, and it was pretty obvious that he disliked the outfit because he didn't really care much for it, so to speak. And I think this is the outfit he wore towards the end of the story, of this very weird outfit, so to speak. It was quite funny, so to speak, but I think he does get mocked on it on sometimes. Then we also had Ambro. He was the director of historical research on Menusa. He didn't listen to the doctor's warnings about the Mara and had the doctor in prison, I think, at some point of the story. Then we had Tana, who was Lon's mother. She was trying to make Lon understand his will, and she does worry about him. Her name in Buddhist context means thirst or desire, which leads to dukkha. And as I said before in my review of Kinder, dukkha is a play on the word for doctor. So she did desire for Lon to become the Federator, and her desire was what drove Lon to be possessed by the Mara, so to speak. And then we had Sheila. He was the historian and Ambrose's assistant. Sheila was convinced of the doctor's warnings about the Mara earlier on and realized the severity of the situation and pretty much decided to ally himself with the doctor and Nissa, and he listened to the doctor's warnings, and he freed the doctor and Nissa in part 3 and helped them find Dojan, who was in the desert. And then we have Dojan. He was the former director. He believed that the Mara would return, so he decided to flee to the desert and learned how to finally defeat the Mara. He taught the method to the doctor when he was found and gave him a replica of the Great Crystal, which allowed him to find the still point to try and defeat the Mara. And the enemy was the Mara, as per usual. The Mara wasn't defeated on Diva Loca, but was trapped in the circle of mirrors, and it was lodged deep in Tegan's subconscious, which was causing her to have nightmares, and that's how the Mara was able to get Tegan to take the TARDIS to Menusa, where the Mara originated from. So the Mara ended the Menusan Empire to try to create the Sumerian Empire, and the Mara was finally defeated when the Doctor used the Great Crystal to channel his force inside the crystal, which was used to break the Mara's hold over the Menusans. The Mara was quite good here, and it was even more intimidating than it was on Kinder, which would definitely made the story more interesting, but not as good as Kinder in my opinion. So on to the photo of Snakedance. I think my main complaint is that it borrows some elements of Kinder and does make it a bit more of a retelling of Kingdom, not just a sequel as it was meant to have been. And Tegan was once again used to pass on the possession to another man. It was Aris in Kinder and London Snakedance, and both stories kind of push Tegan to the sidelines, even once the possession is passed on. Even though in Snakedance, Tegan remained possessed by the Mara, and she doesn't really show up. And Tegan is pretty much missing for at least the first half of part 4, so Snakedance pretty much carries on the fault from Kinder, and is not really much the same in some areas. Other complaints I do have is that it does drag a bit. It does drag. It was quite evident in the scene when the Doctor's imprisoned and later Nissa was trying to free the Doctor. She does actually mention the sonic screwdriver, but then the Doctor's Sonic was destroyed in the last season, and this is another issue of having no Sonic, because yes, it allows the writer to be more creative in certain situations, but at the same time, in this instance, it just pretty much drags on the story and does eat a lot of plot time. So to conclude, Snakedance is a very good story. Yeah, and had a good concept as well, but it falls flat in some areas and it hindered the story a fair bit. So I give Snakedance a 6 out of 10. My next story will be Mordrin Undead, the first story of the Black Guardian trilogy, which sees some familiar faces return, and then a new face joins the Doctor as well. So thanks for watching this review. Please let me know your thoughts of Snakedance and this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Like this video if you like this review. Until then, see you later.